smell of pine and wood smoke hit me the moment I stepped out of the car, and for just a second, I let myself believe it was going to be a good day. My daughter Zoe, she was 6, still at the age where everything about Nana's house felt like magic, jumped out before it even had the engine off and ran straight for the porch steps, her boots crunching through the leftover snow that hadn't quite melted yet. It was late October, Thanksgiving weekend, and the drive up from Guelph had taken us just under 2 hours. The maples along the highway had gone full copper and amber. Zoe had spent most of the drive pressed against the window, narrating the colors like a sports commentator. That one's orange red, Mama. That one's just orange. That one looks like fire. I'd smiled at every single one. My grandmother's house sat at the end of a gravel road outside a small town near Owen Sound, Ontario. A white 2-story with green shutters and a wraparound porch that sagged slightly on the left side. She'd lived there for 41 years. My grandfather had built the addition himself, the one with the big kitchen windows that faced the backyard. He passed 7 years ago. She'd never once talked about leaving. I wasn't supposed to be there. That's what I need to tell you first, because everything that happened that weekend started with the fact that I showed up when someone had gone to great lengths to make sure I wouldn't. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, my brother had called to tell me the holiday plans had changed. Low-key this year, he said. Nana's feeling tired. She wants to keep it small, just immediate family. He said it so casually, like he was reading from a grocery list. I asked what immediate family meant, given that Nana's immediate family was me, him, and our cousin from Sudbury who came maybe once every 2 years. He said just us, him and his wife Nana. A quiet weekend. I said that was fine. I was disappointed, but I said it was fine. Zoe had already started asking about Nana's stuffing, the kind with dried cranberries and walnuts that she made from scratch every year, but I told her we'd do our own Thanksgiving at home. I bought a small turkey breast. I found a cranberry recipe online. I told myself it was okay. Then, 4 days before the holiday, Nana called me. She called from her landline, which she still had because she didn't entirely trust her cell phone for anything important. I was in the middle of folding laundry when her number came up on my screen, and I answered immediately, the way I always did with her. She asked what I was doing for Thanksgiving. I told her what my brother had said, that plans had changed, that she wanted quiet this year. There was a pause. A long one. I never said that, she told me. I never said anything of the sort. I called my brother after I got off the phone with Nana. He didn't pick up. I texted him. A short message, just, Nana says she didn't ask for a small Thanksgiving. What's going on? He read it. I watched the little check marks go blue. He didn't reply. I sat with it for 2 days. I'm not someone who loves confrontation. I'd spent most of my life trying to keep the peace in our family, which was its own kind of full-time job. Especially after our parents divorced when I was 14, and my brother, who was 20 by then, had decided, without quite saying it, that everything was my mother's fault, and that I'd chosen her side by living with her. We'd never fully repaired that. There were years of polite, careful distance. Then he married his wife, and the distance became something harder to name. I told myself I was probably overreacting. I told myself there was probably a reasonable explanation. I drove up to Nana's on the Saturday afternoon. I want to be honest about why. Part of it was that Nana had asked me to come. Part of it was Zoe, who had been looking forward to seeing her great-grandmother for months and had made her a card out of construction paper with drawings of turkeys that looked more like hedgehogs. But part of it, and I'm not ashamed to say this, was that I had a feeling. The kind you get when something is wrong but you don't have the words for it yet. The kind that sits in your chest like a stone. The gravel crunched under my tires when I pulled up. Smoke was coming from the chimney. I could see warm light through the kitchen windows. It looked exactly the way Nana's house always looked on a holiday weekend, and for a moment I felt the knot in my chest loosen just a little. Then the front door opened, and it wasn't Nana who stepped out. It was my sister-in-law. She stood on the porch with her arms crossed over her chest, and the expression on her face was not one of surprise. It was something I can only describe as prepared. She had been waiting for this. She walked down the 2 porch steps and stopped at the bottom, blocking the path. "You weren't invited?" she said. She said it quietly. She said it the way you might say the meeting's been cancelled. Flat, matter of fact, no room for negotiation. I told her that Nana had called me, that Nana had asked me to come. She said Nana was tired. She said Nana was confused sometimes, that she said things she didn't fully mean, and that my brother and she were doing their best to protect her from being overwhelmed. She said this with the particular tone of someone who has rehearsed the words but is trying to sound like they haven't. Zoe was standing next to me. She'd been holding my hand, but I felt her grip tighten. She looked up at my sister in law and then up at me, and she said, in that very loud whisper that 6-year-olds have when they think they're being quiet, Mama, why can't we go in? My sister in law didn't even look at her. You should head back, she said. It's a long drive. I stood there for a moment. I looked at the door behind her, at the light coming through the window, and I thought about knocking. I thought about pushing past her and knocking. But Zoe was right there, and I didn't want to turn Thanksgiving into a scene that my daughter would remember for the wrong reasons. So I took a breath. I put my hand on Zoe's shoulder. I said, Fine. I said we'd go. We got back in the car. I buckled Zoe in. She asked if we were going home. I told her probably maybe we'd stop for hot chocolate on the way. I was reversing down the gravel lane when my phone rang. It was Nana. You turn around right now, she said. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask where I was. She just said it. Steady, clear, no confusion in her voice whatsoever. I can see your car from the window. You turn around and you come inside this house. I put the car in park. Zoe looked at me with enormous eyes. Mama, we're going in, I said. Nana met us at the door herself. She was 83 years old and she moved slower than she used to, but she was standing straight and she held the door open wide, and when Zoe came up the steps, she bent down, slowly, carefully, and took Zoe's face in both her hands and said, There is my girl. There she is. Zoe hugged her around the middle and Nana laughed, the real kind, the kind that came from somewhere deep. My sister-in-law had gone back inside. She was in the kitchen, very busy with something at the counter, her back to us. My brother was in the living room. He stood up when he saw me, and for a moment he looked like he was going to say something, but then Nana came in behind me and he didn't. Dinner was already mostly prepared. The turkey was in the oven. Nana had started cooking on Friday, the way she always did. The house smelled of roasted squash and sage, of the particular warm dust smell of the wood stove, of the cranberry sauce that had been sitting in the fridge in a ceramic dish since Thursday. It smelled like every Thanksgiving I had ever known, and standing there in the hallway, I had to press my lips together for a second to keep myself composed. We sat down to eat. My brother made a point of being charming through dinner, telling stories, asking Zoe about school, laughing at the right moments. His wife served herself and spoke little. Nana sat at the head of the table, the way she always had. The old wooden chair with the arms, the one that had been my grandfather's once, that she kept using after he died. So we told Nana about her hedgehog turkey card, and Nana said she would frame it. Halfway through dinner, Nana put down her fork. She didn't say anything right away. She looked around the table, at my brother, at his wife, at me, at Zoe. She took her time. Then she reached down beside her chair and lifted a plastic shopping bag onto the table. Not a briefcase, not a folder. Just a grocery bag, the kind from the Foodland in town, slightly crumpled. She set it on the table between the cranberry sauce and the gravy boat. I'd like to talk about some things, she said. The things in that bag had been sitting in Nana's bedroom closet for 6 weeks. She told us that. She said she'd found them the same way you find things you weren't looking for. She'd been going through the cedar chest where she kept her winter shawls, and she'd noticed the envelope tucked underneath. The envelope contained 3 documents. The first was a photocopy of a change of address form, filed with her bank, rerouting her paper statements to a post office box she'd never heard of, in my brother's town. The second was a printout of a transaction, her savings account. A withdrawal of $22,000 made 11 months earlier to an account she did not recognize. The authorization signature on the accompanying form was hers. Except that it wasn't. She'd never signed it. She'd never authorized any transfer. She'd never spoken to anyone at the bank about it. The third was a listing, a real estate listing, printed from her website. For her house. Her house. Listed for sale. Not publicly, Not yet, it was marked as pre-listing. But there was a property evaluation, and there was an address, and the address was this house. The house with the green shutters and the sagging porch and the kitchen windows my grandfather had built. And there was an agent name, and the agent was my sister in law's former colleague. Nana had gone to the bank herself. She'd taken a cab. She hadn't told anyone. She'd sat across from a branch manager and shown him the signature on that authorization form. And he'd compared it against her file. And he'd said, "Mrs. Holt, this is not your signature." Mrs. Holt. That was Nana. Her name was Elaine Holt, and she had lived in that house for 41 years and paid every bill herself and kept her finances in a green accordion folder in the second drawer of her desk since before I was born. And she had figured out at 83 on her own that something had gone wrong. The bank had already filed a report with the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. There was already a file open. My brother didn't know that part yet. The table was very quiet. Zoe had stopped eating. She looked at Nana, then at me, then at her plate. She was 6 years old and she couldn't follow the financial details, but she understood the room. Kids always do. She very carefully picked up her fork and kept eating her stuffing, and I loved her so much in that moment that it was almost hard to breathe. My brother said, "Nana, that's not what happened. It's not what it looks like." My sister-in-law said nothing. Nana looked at my brother for a long moment. She had known him for 54 years. She taught him to ride a bike in this driveway. She'd driven him to hockey practice and sat in cold arenas on Saturday mornings for a decade and a half. She looked at him the way you look at someone when you're trying to find something you used to know. She said, "Then tell me what it looks like." He didn't. What happened afterward is something I've thought about many times since. The way you replay things, trying to understand them, trying to find the moment where you could have done something differently. Though I don't think I could have bun. My brother and his wife left before the dishes were done. He pushed back his chair and said they needed to drive back that night. That there was something with work. His wife was already in the hallway. They didn't say goodbye to Zoe. I washed the dishes. Nana dried them slowly, the way she always had. One dish at a time, setting each one carefully on the rack with both hands. Zoe sat at the kitchen table and drew pictures on the back of a flyer Nana had on the counter, humming quietly to herself. The legal side of things, I won't pretend to understand completely. In Canada, when someone files a forged authorization with a financial institution, it can involve both civil and criminal proceedings. The bank's fraud department had already escalated it. And Nana had been connected with a victim services advocate through the Ontario Ministry of the Attorney General. The money, the $22,000, was being investigated. Whether it would be recovered depended on things I didn't fully grasp at the time. But the advocate had told Nana the path forward was clearer than she might expect, precisely because the bank had caught the signature discrepancy themselves. The house listing, because it hadn't gone public, was easier. A real estate agent cannot list a property without authorization from the registered owner, and a pre-listing evaluation is not a contract. Nana's lawyer, she had a lawyer, a woman in Owen Sound she'd been seeing for years for estate documents, sent a letter. That was enough to close it. The $22,000 came from an account my grandfather had set up years ago, a joint account meant for property maintenance. The furnace, the roof, repairs. My grandfather had added Nana as co-signer and listed my brother as a secondary contact, not as an account holder, but as someone who could be reached in an emergency. My brother had apparently decided that designation meant something it didn't. Nana told me this on the Sunday morning, sitting at the kitchen table with her tea, in the specific patient tone she used when she was explaining something she'd already made her peace with. She also told me that she had called a notary 2 weeks earlier. She slid an envelope across the table to me. My name was written on the outside in her handwriting. Careful, slightly shaky, but completely hers. I looked at her. She nodded. Inside was a letter, handwritten 2 pages, and clipped to the letter was an updated copy of her will. I'm not going to share the specifics of what was in the letter, because it was private and it was meant for me, and I think some things are allowed to be kept. But I will tell you what she said at the end of it, because she said it again in person that morning over tea, and I wrote it down in my phone afterward because I didn't want to forget it. She said, "The ones who show up are not obligated to announce themselves. They just show up. You have always shown up." Zoe came downstairs in her socks while we were sitting there. She padded over to Nana and climbed up onto the chair next to her without asking, and Nana put an arm around her. They sat like that, my grandmother and my daughter, 83 and 6, while the morning came through the kitchen windows and the coffee went cold in my mug, and I sat across from them trying to hold myself together. Zoe said, Nana, can we make the cranberry muffins today? Nana said, we absolutely can. They made the muffins. I sat at the counter and watched them. Nana reading out the measurements and Zoe dumping things into the bowl with great enthusiasm and very little precision. Flour went on the counter. A bit went on Zoe's sleeve. Nana didn't say anything about it. The muffins were a little dense and a little uneven and completely perfect. That was 8 months ago now. My brother and I have not spoken since Thanksgiving. I don't say that with satisfaction. I want to be honest about that. There's a particular kind of grief that comes with family estrangement that doesn't look like grief from the outside. Because from the outside, people often say things like, good riddance, and you're better off. And maybe that's true. But it still sits differently than you'd expect. He was my brother for 34 years before he was someone who did this. And those years don't disappear just because of what came after. His wife has not reached out. Nana is doing well. She's still in the house with the green shutters. She started going to a seniors art class on Wednesday afternoons at the Brick Center in town, which she describes as mostly therapeutic with occasional bursts of chaos. She video calls Zoe on Sunday evenings. Zoe shows her things. Drawings, rocks she's found, a caterpillar she discovered in the backyard that she named Jared and kept for 4 days before releasing him. The fraud investigation is ongoing. The bank has recovered a portion of the money through an internal dispute process that her advocate helped navigate. Whether the rest will be recovered through legal proceedings, I don't know yet. What I know is that I drove up to Owen Sound one more time in December, just Zoe and me, and we put up Nana's Christmas decorations together. The tinfoil garland she's had since the 70s, the ceramic nativity that's missing one of the wise men, the string of lights that takes 45 minutes to unknot every single year. Nana made her mulled cider. Zoe found a bag of old ornaments in the basement and hung every one of them on the tree, packed together on the lower branches she could reach, leaving the whole top half bare. Nana looked at the tree. That is exactly right, she said. On the drive home, Zoe fell asleep in the back seat somewhere around Barry. The highway was dark and quiet, and the sky had cleared and there were stars. The kind you don't get in the city, just dense and still above the fields. I drove with the radio low, and I thought about the plastic shopping bag on the Thanksgiving table, and the way Nana had set it down between the cranberry sauce and the gravy boat without any drama, without any performance. Just the quiet, firm certainty of someone who had waited for the right moment and then decided calmly that it had arrived. I thought about what she'd said. The ones who show up. Just show up. I've been showing up my whole life. For a long time, I thought it was something I should apologize for. Being the one who remembered birthdays, who sent the cards, who called on Sundays, who drove 2 hours on a holiday weekend with a 6-year-old and a car full of casserole ingredients because something felt wrong and I couldn't ignore it. I thought being the one who showed up meant I was needy or demanding or not good at holding space. I'm done thinking that. Zoe made a noise in her sleep. A small, satisfied sound, like she was settling into something comfortable. I reached back and pulled her blanket up a little without waking her. And then I put both hands back on the wheel and kept driving north through the dark toward home. I keep coming back to the image of that Foodland bag sitting on the table between the cranberry sauce and the gravy boat. There was nothing dramatic about the way Nana set it down. No raised voice, no announcement. Just an 83-year-old woman who had done her work quietly, alone, and decided that Thanksgiving dinner was exactly the right moment to lay it all out. That's the thing I've been sitting with ever since. My brother had counted on her not noticing. He'd counted on the assumption that age softens a person's sharpness. That someone who needs help with the storm door and takes a cab to appointments instead of driving wouldn't think to check her own bank statements, wouldn't know to walk into a branch and ask a manager to compare signatures. He was wrong about who she was. And actions built on that kind of wrong assumption tend to collapse under their own weight eventually. Not because the universe is tidy, but because deception requires constant maintenance. And most people aren't as careful as they think they are. The $22,000, the rerouted statements, the pre listing on a house she never agreed to sell, none of it happened in a vacuum. It was a series of choices, and each one left a paper trail, the way choices always do. What I didn't expect was how much clarity came from watching Nana handle it. She didn't fall apart. She didn't call me in a panic. She found what she found, she thought about it, and then she went to the bank herself. She asked the right questions, she listened carefully to the answers. At 83, she demonstrated more clear headed judgment than most people I know at half her age. Not because she's exceptional in some distant mythological way, but because she had spent a lifetime paying attention to things, asking questions, and refusing to accept explanations that didn't quite add up. That habit of mind doesn't retire just because your hair goes white. Zoe, who is 6 and understood approximately none of the financial details, picked up on something else entirely that weekend. She understood that Nana had been treated as though she didn't matter. And she understood, in the wordless way children do, that showing up anyway was the right response. She made her hedgehog turkey card. She climbed into the chair beside Nana without asking. She asked about the cranberry muffins while the rest of us were still finding our footing. There's something in that I find genuinely instructive. That kindness doesn't wait for the atmosphere to clear, it just keeps going. What I've had to reckon with, personally, is the part I played in the years before that weekend. The peacekeeping. The carefully neutral conversations. The way I told myself that not making things worse was the same as doing something good. I don't think that's true anymore. Staying quiet in order to keep things comfortable is not the same as being kind. Sometimes it just makes more room for harm to continue unnoticed. The hardest part of all of this isn't the estrangement, or the legal process, or even the grief of watching a sibling become someone you don't recognize. The hardest part is accepting that you can't make someone be who you hoped they were. You can only decide what you're willing to keep showing up for. I'm still learning how to sit with that. But I know which direction I'm driving.